Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Conversations from Stritch. My name is Dave Livingston, president of Lewis University, and I'm joined by Dr. Christopher Sint, our provost here at Lewis. We are excited to have our show today. As most people know, we had commencement this past weekend, finals, and everything is kind of wrapping up. I wanted to say, a few things about the end of the year. We've been talking about it leading up to it for weeks now, but we had a wonderful commencement weekend this past weekend, which was preceded by many celebratory events for specific departments and colleges. We had more than 5,000 people attend or view the online graduate and undergraduate commencement ceremonies. I loved was I was watching it, all the shout outs or texts, little hearts and emojis and everything that were going across the screen. And I really thought about our the celebrations that we have normally, in which so that other people's names can be heard, we have to ask people to be quiet, and these texts just kept popping up, and nobody was telling anybody to stop texting, so it was great. And I appreciate you as family members and friends really congratulating our graduates, because with it being online, they missed out on a lot, but I think those shout outs and texts really make a difference for everyone. So congratulations again to everyone who graduated. This week, as we kind of move into our summer mode, May Institute began on Monday. We've had 4 really wonderful days of faculty and staff presenting to other faculty about new ways to think about pedagogy and to think about teaching and to expand teaching across different areas. So I wanted to say thank you to Dr. Mike Cherry, his whole team, everybody who coordinated, all the presenters and participants. I know I enjoyed the sessions that I went to. I also want to say that summer school has started this week, with many students continuing their classes this summer towards their degree. The popularity of online summer school has really been a positive outcome over the last couple summers. People have renewed their expertise in terms of online and hybrid education, and we are looking forward to the fall in person. But I think with all that we've learned from online, summers moving forward will have the majority of classes online, because as our students go home, they can still do classes that fit directly into the curriculum. A reminder to those people that have not registered for summer but may want to pick up a course, there's still a start on May 31st and another start on July 5th. And of course, registration is open for the fall semester for those who have not registered yet as returning students. So those returning students, if you haven't registered yet, you might want to get on there as soon as possible, just to make sure that you get the class at the time that you want. Also, for those who live on campus or planning on living on campus in the fall, whether new students or returning students, make sure that you submit your paperwork. That's all been out there, but I just want to remind people that if you're home and you're thinking, do I want to live on campus or not, you can reach out to our people in housing, and Adam will be happy to reach back and figure out all that paperwork. So with that, a little turn to COVID questions.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. Great to be with you. I have a few things to say about COVID-19. As we all know from the news, things are trending very positively right now across the state and across the country. The promise of reopening and reduced restrictions in our communities is becoming much more of a reality as more of us become fully vaccinated and positive case levels trend downward. The recent FDA emergency authorization of a COVID-19 vaccine for 12 to 15-year-olds also increases our community's protection. By the way, my daughter is in that age group and is getting her first vaccination shot tomorrow morning.
That's awesome.
It's very exciting. Our leadership continues to analyze and discuss our university's policies and practices in regards to COVID-19 mitigation efforts. We'll continue to follow, for now, the guidance of national, state, and county authorities, as well as align our decisions with advice from organizations that we've talked about all year long, the American College Health Association, the NCAA, and others. So as we begin the summer term, we're encouraging all individuals to get the COVID-19 vaccine, and we are keeping our mitigation measures in place for the time being. And we'll announce changes along those lines as the summer goes on for the summer terms. Always a reminder that the Lewis U app remains an important tool for our community during the pandemic. A few of the tasks you can do there and must do there: a mandatory COVID-19 symptom screening before arriving on campus each day, and for residential students to do it daily. For summer classes, we'll continue to use the QR codes for students who are attending face-to-face or blended instruction on campus or doing research on campus, as some of our students are doing now. The app can be used to report a positive COVID-19 test, reserve an indoor study space, and to reach out and contact the COVID-19 hotline team, which is always available to you. And then the app also contains access to a lot of other health information that will be beneficial. So I think that's all I have to say about COVID-19. You were going to maybe talk about athletics.
A few things as we wrap up the year on athletics in our co-curricular world. We had a really exciting tournament for outdoor track and field last week for the conference. The women won the 5th straight team title for the GLVC, the 6th in 7 years, and 11 overall on set. We had 11, 11th overall. I'm trying to figure out this. On May 8th, they competed for that championship. The Flyers won 7 events on Saturday, had scoring performances in 11 events, and the men's track and field finished 3rd in the tournament. Both teams will continue to compete. They have the Dr. Keeler invitation on this weekend, and then the NCAA championships start at the end of the month. Also wanted to say congratulations to the men's baseball team who clinched a GLVC playoff berth. They play tonight in the first round against Illinois Springfield. And then we have some other academic congratulations to offer.
Yeah, I keep thinking that as the semester winds down and we move into summer that we'll have less announcements about great accomplishments on campus, but it never really stops. Lewis, so I have several congratulations to make. Congratulations to our faculty receiving promotion and tenure this year. I think President Livingston announced that our board approved promotion and tenure. And I'd really like to maybe just say out loud the names of the faculty receiving tenure and just do a kind of final congratulations for those professors. Actually, I think we'll just display them there and say again, really, really amazing, special time in our faculty member's life to reach this level of distinction, to receive tenure at a university. And you know, our faculty are the core and really longest serving leaders of our institution, and having tenure is the pathway to just years and years and years of decades of great service and leadership on so many different levels at the university. So I'd just like to congratulate them one more time on that. So thank you for displaying their names. Congratulations to Professor Lee Harsey, who was honored as the 2021 Illinois School Counselor Association Dr. Tony Telluride School Counselor Educator of the Year. It's a long title of a distinction, but incredible honor. You know, most distinguished school counseling educator in the state is essentially what that says. And so congratulations to Dr. Harsey for that real big honor. Our chapter, Lewis University's chapter of Best Buddies, won the Illinois Chapter of the Year for colleges and universities. It's the second time in recent years that we've won that award. The chapter has 85 members at Lewis and has been awarded, has always had a really strong program. So for those of you who are not familiar with Best Buddies, it's an international organization dedicated to establishing one-to-one friendships, integrated employment, leadership development and inclusive living for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So congratulations to all of those 85 members, to Professor Jennifer Buss, who is the faculty advisor, and to 2 individual student winners from Lewis, Amanda Moeller and Michael Yerkes. Congratulations to Lewis student Katie Ewing, whose submission for the Garden Design and Install project at the National Hookup for Black Women Joliet chapter was accepted by the Food for All Healthier Communities initiative. So this is a garden site design. The garden site is on a 7-acre tract of land in an area classified as a food desert in the Joliet area. As the selected project, Ewing will install her design, which includes 23 raised beds for herbs, fruits, and vegetables, a pollinator garden, and children's activity garden. And that installation will take place in sections throughout the month of May and will be finished on June 6th. That's so fast, and really exciting that that will be in place. Congratulations to Dr. Lily Burciaga, Assistant Professor of Psychology, who's accepted a position on the editorial board of the Journal for Social Action in Counseling and Psychology. The journal promotes deep reflection on community change and system transformation for counselors, psychologists, and other human service professionals. So congratulations again to Dr. Burciaga for that great leadership role in her profession. So now we're going to turn to our focus of the day. President Livingston mentioned the May Institute. It's really the theme of this week is around faculty concluding the spring semester, reflecting on that. Some people moving on to teaching right away in the summer, and several others thinking about the year and about preparing for the fall semester. And so that's generally going on. And then one thing we really wanted to do, thinking about faculty transitioning to the end of the semester, is to invite a couple of faculty members who are relatively new to the Lewis experience. They're both completing their first year at Lewis, and just kind of hear a little bit about what their life is like, has been like during COVID-19, and a little bit about just really about to learn and introduce them to the community and learn more about their work on campus. So we're going to ask each of them to come on separately and talk a little bit to each of them separately, and then we'll maybe have a conversation with all 4 of us before we are finished. So our first guest, and I'm looking at my notes here, is Professor Puja Gooptu, who has a Master of Science degree from Rush University. She's a licensed occupational therapist and continues an affiliation with Loyola Medical Center specializing in pediatrics. She actually started with us in the fall and serves as our clinical specialist and fieldwork faculty advisor. And before coming to Lewis, she was the clinical fieldwork coordinator at Elmhurst University. So welcome, Puja. Hello. Great to see you.
Now I can see your mouth moving, but I can't hear you, Puja.
Thank you for having me.
Oh,
Can
there
you
we
hear
go.
me
There
now?
we go. It's wonderful,
Thank you for
wonderful to
having
have
me.
you join us. Really, really good to see you, and thank you for being a part of our community. I know you started with Lewis as an adjunct, and then have recently moved into being a full professor on the campus and working with clinical placements and other classes. Your field is occupational therapy. Could you just for people's sake, basic, and we might get into your research and those other things, but tell us a little bit about what occupational therapy does, and maybe, to some extent, why you wanted to move from the direct service into teaching.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So occupational therapy, as occupational therapists, we try to help individuals who are experiencing any sort of difficulty or challenge executing daily life activities that motivate them and that are meaningful to them. And then we basically help them achieve as much independence as possible in those life activities so that they're able to achieve a high quality of life and engage in meaningful occupations, hence occupational therapy.
That's wonderful. So so now I think maybe it would be nice to hear a little bit about like what your life is like in this job, because there's the clinical element of your work, the developing partnerships and placements for our students, and then there's the teaching. So even in a regular year, what would you be doing kind of from day to day? Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So in a regular year, there's kind of two aspects to my position. One is coordinating fieldwork and clinical placements for the students. And then the other part is teaching. So to go back to a little bit what Dr. Livingston was saying, I have always enjoyed teaching, and I also have always enjoyed having students in the clinic with me. I think that is a really integral and critical aspect of the educational process, is immersing students in that bridge between the didactic coursework into the actual setting, delivering these services and delivering interventions and kind of implementing and synthesizing everything that they've learned. In this position, I get to do both, which is really lucky for me. I get to match students to clinical placements that are that they're going to be successful in, and that with areas that they're interested in. And I also get to work on the didactic part, which is basically being able to teach them in the classroom. So there's a couple of different aspects to my position, and it's really interesting to see how both of them balance each other out. And the greatest joy for me personally is seeing students who learn in the classroom go out onto their field work and then tell me how content in the classroom is helping them when they're in the clinic, and then vice versa, how their experience in the clinic really helps to enhance their understanding of the topics and content that we're trying to discuss and reflect and teach on in the classroom setting.
Yeah, so Puja, could you talk a little bit about how COVID-19 has changed the experience for these students that you're talking about, but also for you as a faculty member? So, we talk, we started this show because of COVID. We talk about COVID every week, but how's it impacted occupational therapy and especially our students' experience of going through this process?
Yeah, sure. Well, so this past year, as I'm sure most people will agree, it was extremely challenging and complicated given the pandemic. So we all kind of had to navigate this unfamiliar territory. And, personally for me as a first-year professor, I was navigating the challenge of instructing and coordinating these clinical placements along with learning and becoming familiar with the world of academia. I do think it was a really valuable learning experience, though, because we were trying to be creative and determine different strategies for our students to be able to fulfill their fieldwork assignments. We had to come up with different ways of having that happen. Because of COVID, a lot of our traditional sites, they were canceling these clinical placements due to restrictions. This was happening all across the country. And we needed to kind of come together and develop other ways for them to fulfill these fieldwork requirements so that they could graduate. What ended up happening, though, was an opportunity for growth, I think, for our program to develop more community partners, and we did just that. So particularly this year, we were able to develop collaborations with community sites for what's called a non-traditional fieldwork model. And for this, students complete their clinical placement under supervision of an occupational therapist or an OT, but at sites that don't typically have full-time OT services for their clients. And what occurred from this is pretty incredible, because the students who served at these sites basically gained a keen understanding of other aspects of OT service delivery in the community, such as completing a needs assessment, writing grants for funding, developing programming, implementing and evaluating that programming. They got all these other skills, and in turn, these community partners also benefited from this partnership, as they were able to offer their clients these occupational therapy services and programming. And these individuals and clients are in need of OT services, but they don't have consistent access to these services. So I feel like it was a silver lining, if you will, to our situation, because it's so much in line with Lewis's values of justice and association, and teaching how to be socially responsible, promoting social justice, because our students learned how to be advocates for people who have lack of access to healthcare, and then be able to provide those services to them, because we had to be creative and think of different ways for them to fulfill their clinical placement requirements.
Yeah, that's great.
That's great. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit more about that. Do you think we will continue those types of relationships that were developed this year because of these COVID constraints? And I guess if you could talk a little bit about what you've observed in our other partners and for potential clinical sites for occupational therapy, and how are they doing? Are they reopening? And is the profession evolving as the year goes on?
Yeah, so to address your first question, we definitely will continue these partnerships. I think that the students gained invaluable experience. Like I said, they really developed so many more skills that you might not necessarily have the opportunity to develop in traditional settings. And also it really, like I said, kind of feeds into Lewis's value of, promoting healthcare equity, and increasing these access to services, which I think is very fulfilling for us as a program, and also very fulfilling for the students. So we will definitely continue these partnerships, or we're happy to. And then, yeah, what was the second part of your question?
Well, the more traditional, more traditional placements, and how those are kind of coming back online. So is it going to be a mix, or and then where's the field going? Are more and more people coming in? I know there were a lot fewer elective surgeries, for instance, and other things that happened, but now things seem to be opening back up. And is that happening in OT? And what about those old placement partners?
It is happening. I'm really glad to say that it is happening. Our students are going out on field work this summer and fall, and those traditional sites, hospitals, clinics, they are opening back up. They're accepting students again. It's taking some time, to slowly kind of get resources and clinical instructors in line with the amount of students, because there's so much need, but they are definitely opening back up again. Client caseloads are increasing again. Patients are coming back to the clinic. So I definitely think that things are improving. This summer, I think it'll be kind of a transition period, but things really seem to be in line for opening up as they were before for the fall. So I hope that continues.
So Puja, occupational therapy is a master's degree, and we have a question from a parent of a future undergraduate who wants to know, if my son or daughter is interested in occupational therapy, what would you advise about a kind of pathway to get that master's degree, or what to do in the undergraduate side of things in order to prepare yourself?
Sure. So with COVID improving, one thing that should also be improving is the opportunity to observe and volunteer in clinics and hospitals in the occupational therapy departments. I would advise any students who are interested in the field to immerse yourself into it. Try to learn about it, do your research, read articles about occupational therapy practice and kind of what's new and up and coming. I would also say that, like I said, as clinics start opening up again, do take opportunities to observe and volunteer in different OT clinics serving populations across the lifespan. So, being able to observe pediatrics and adults and whatnot, I think that really would give the best idea of whether or not this is something that you are interested in, and also what population you might be interested in, and also to really understand what it is that OT does and our distinct value and our role in these different settings.
And do most undergrads, Puja, get degrees in biology, in exercise science, in what are the normal fields that, like, because you, I know, review some, as a group, review some of the applications. Undergrads coming in, what is the most common undergrad major?
So we do see a majority of degrees in psychology, biology, exercise science, like you said. But I will also say that one thing that's great about occupational therapy is we really celebrate diversity and different backgrounds. So there's not really a limit to, a restriction of what you can get your bachelor's in. I think that what's great about OT is different perspectives really enhance what's brought to the table. And so, we've had a variety of backgrounds, of students coming in with all sorts of different degrees. So I won't even really label it that way, because somebody from a different background that's not based in sciences might be a wonderful OT. It really just depends on their interest and the skill set that they're able to develop in grad school.
Excellent.
That's really interesting. So our last question for you before asking Dr. Sartell to join us. You were one of the planners of the May Institute this year, which is, we've been talking about a bit. I just wonder if you could reflect on what that experience was like as a new faculty member doing service on this important planning group throughout the year, and I presume that's working in faculty development as well. And then a little bit about if you have any thoughts about reflection about the May Institute as it's gone on this week, that would be interesting to us too.
Sure, yeah, it's been a pleasure to serve on the faculty development committee. It's a great committee, and so I'll say, the primary focus of May Institute is to provide faculty an opportunity to really just reflect and take action on our own teaching and learning, and understand innovative teaching strategies and different technologies. So the process was really interesting. It was the first time I served on the committee, as it's my first year at Lewis. And so what really happened is our committee kind of had a call across campus for presentation proposals, and then we reviewed those proposals, and then we would look through them and select from there. So this year we had a variety of topics. Obviously, with the pandemic, a lot of topics honed in on exploring challenges and solutions with teaching during COVID, and also the challenges of working from home that so many of us faced. Mindfulness, maintaining balance while working from home. I also have two small boys, a 4-year-old and an 18-month-old, who are home with me. So that's a challenge in its own, is balancing that while trying to get your daily work duties done. Also, there were a lot of courses on promoting diversity and equity in our Lewis community, but there's still this major focus on teaching, and also just discussing and reflecting on the faculty experience on our campus.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for your service on that committee all year long, and for helping to put together this terrific week. So we'd like to now introduce our second guest, Dr. Elizabeth Sartell. I misspoke. Elizabeth Sartell is an assistant professor of theology and a PhD candidate, that's why I misspoke, at the University of Chicago in Islamic Studies, and completing her PhD probably this summer. We can ask her about that. Professor Sartell has published articles, presented talks, and led workshops in the fields of Islamic medical ethics, science, magic, and religion in this Islamicate world, Islamic mysticism, Islamic and Jewish lettrism, and inclusive pedagogy in the humanities and in the study of religion. We're so very pleased to welcome Elizabeth Sartell. And hello.
Thank you so much for having me here.
And I'm so sorry I messed up on your introduction. We were preparing for that, and I still messed it up. We can't actually see you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I can't. We can't see you, which may be a bandwidth thing, but we can hear you.
Yeah.
And I think what we'll do is...
You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we can.
We'll hope that the video comes back online, but maybe just the same thing with that introduction as we asked Puja. So Elizabeth, tell me a little bit about your the work you've done in Islamic studies, and maybe what drew you into that, as a field. And then, as you are wrapping up the dissertation, maybe you could give us just a little tidbit of what it's about.
Sure. So I started out in the field of Islamic studies by starting to take courses on the study of religion as an undergraduate. So I was a math major, and then I started taking these courses on religion and discovered that there was a whole really exciting academic field that I could dive into. And so I ended up combining my interests and having a double major then in math and in religion. And then I ended up continuing kind of that dialogue between the two fields by kind of then focusing in on where science, philosophy, mathematics kind of intersects with religion, in particular in Islamic studies, when I went in to do my research for the MA and now for the PhD as well. So yes, my dissertation research focuses on origin stories, or stories about the creation of the universe. So this is because I think that creation myths play a really important structural role, not just in defining humanity's place in the cosmos, but also in organizing the ways in which we can imagine and interact with the world around us. So I focus particularly on one figure, Ibn al-Arabi, who is a well-known Muslim Sufi sheikh from the 13th century, and how his theory about the origins of the universe, which he believes stem from the letters of the Arabic alphabet, is at the intersection of medieval philosophy, or what we might categorize as science today, and religion. But I also look at how his origin story can be read in comparison to other origin stories from the medieval Islamic world, such as the origin story from Sadiq Gaon, who is a Jewish philosopher. So my research is at a couple different crossroads, both of science and religion, but also the crossroads of religious traditions as well, and how we can read Jewish and Muslim texts from the same worlds in conversation. Because I think bringing these texts into conversation really highlights the ways in which Jewish mystical treatises are directly relevant to understanding their Islamic counterparts, because they're emerging from the same world and from the same questions. So my research really kind of calls for a recognition of the relevance of minority texts to the studies of majority cultures, a recognition that I think has implications probably for academic studies and also lived ethics in the world kind of far beyond these two particular creation stories.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are all kinds of exciting implications there. I wonder if maybe you could talk a little bit about like how, or really what did you teach this year, and what were some of the classes you taught this year, and what are you thinking about for the future, and how does it connect to your your areas of research that you just described a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, so several of these ideas have kind of become intertwined in the ways that I teach my classes. So for example, I taught several sections of Search for Faith, which is one of the 100 level gen ed courses in theology. And so in my sections, we use texts from several religious traditions in order to, for example, think about the relationship between rationality and faith. Because I do think that taking a comparative lens can help us to think about the broader or general approaches to these intersections, but also to appreciate those differences in how theologians from the Islamic or the Jewish or the Christian faith answer these questions about how rationality can inform or is completed by faith, or vice versa. That we can really see and appreciate kind of the diversity of religious thinking, both among religious traditions, but also within each individual religious tradition as well. And that kind of comparative lens was something that I also brought into the sections of world religions that I taught this year as well. And then one of my main projects this year, which was really exciting, was to develop new courses that will start to be offered next year to the Lewis community. And so these new courses also pull from my area of specialization. So for example, I'm looking forward to teaching an Introduction to Islam course in the fall, which is a 200 level gen ed course. And that will offer a basic introduction to Islam, exploring Islam as a living tradition, so studying diverse contemporary practices of Muslim communities around the world. And then I also developed another 200 level gen ed course that I'll likely offer in the spring that focuses specifically on origin stories and creation narratives. So like those that I use in my research, but pulling both from religious traditions, so Islam, Christianity, and Judaism in particular, as well as from science. So using some of those medieval philosophical texts, but also modern accounts of how the world began from fields like astronomy and physics. So we'll think about the use of creation stories, how they help us explore the relationships between science and religion. But then also, what are those cultural and ethical dimensions of origin stories? You know, how does each origin story, whether it's from religion or from science, provide a framework for how we understand ourselves and how we understand the world around us?
Yeah, so another key aspect, and you know this, Elizabeth, I don't know if everybody knows this, but my field is religion as well. But in addition to creation narratives, there are issues of tragedy, that religions are always dealing with questions of tragedy. So obviously we're in the midst of a tragedy in terms of a global pandemic. So how has that influenced you as a first-year faculty who had to start a university experience, learning how to teach online, but also dealing with all the things that happen in both your own life and in the lives of your students as COVID played itself out over the last, 15 months?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think as all faculty have, there is a lot of added time and work and struggle kind of put towards learning best practices for online pedagogy, trying to create new and engaging methods for online courses. And I think part of what I really missed, and I think I saw this in my students as well, is not having those kind of small in-person connections. So I found that I really missed, for myself, the opportunities for small chat and kind of the connections and collaborations that can emerge from kind of seemingly small hallway conversations or introductions. And so those, you had to be, I think, a lot more intentional about reaching out and creating those opportunities for open conversations. So that was something that I kind of started to notice in my courses as well, where discussion online can sometimes seem a little delayed or stilted, just with people muting and unmuting and kind of a little bit of time needed for people to feel comfortable contributing. So I think being more intentional about creating space for check-ins, about creating space, for example, through some of their online journal assignments where they were connecting some of our readings to their everyday lives and asking questions that helped them reflect about how is what we're learning helping you think through your current struggles today, whether it be with the pandemic in specific or with some larger social issues that are going on or with personal issues. How does learning about how people think about faith and how people search for faith and how people live out their faith in all of these different complexities, how does that help you think about the way that you find meaning in your life as well? And so being able to create space for that reflection, but then also create space to facilitate those kinds of interactions and more open discussions so that students can kind of get to know each other, but also get to know me a little bit more than is usually facilitated in kind of the online format was one of my priorities.
So interesting listening to you talk about that. It's a very thoughtful approach. I wonder if you could maybe expand a little bit on the parts of being a professor that have to do with working with colleagues and doing service at the university. And I think most people watching know it's an integral part of a faculty's member's life is providing service. Puja talked about serving on the faculty development committee, for example. How has that been? Because we know, and I don't think we've said this out loud, but you were telling us before we went on that you really haven't been on campus because of your particular workload has been very much online. And so what was it like, just kind of coming into knowledge of what it's like to serve on committees and be a member of a department and things like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's been a little bit different because, like I said, as those connections don't happen as organically as they may have if we were on campus. However, I have been really grateful to several of my colleagues in the Department of Theology and kind of across campus who have not only kind of emailed or, scheduled some of these conversations just to check in and make sure everything was going okay and I was keeping my head above water and stuff, but also then to bring me into some of these initiatives that they know align with my interests in inclusive and anti-racist pedagogy or align with my interests in my scholarly research and kind of comparative Abrahamic religions. So I was appointed as a non-voting member of the Educational Policies Committee within our college. So that's been a really rewarding experience to have the opportunity to think through best practices of educational policy for our courses and for our programs in the college. I was also able to join the Interfaith Cooperation Committee because of my teaching interests in Islam and in comparative Abrahamic religions. So I had the opportunity to help with some of the interfaith panel events like the one that they organized in February, From Fear to Compassion, on healing the divide. And then we've been working on putting together an interfaith calendar of religious holidays that might be important to different members of the Lewis community. And then also through that and through a couple other avenues, I was able to expand my interest in inclusive and anti-racist pedagogy. So, for example, working with Dr. Christy Kelly and her really incredible efforts and planning of initiatives that support diversity and inclusion on campus. So I helped with facilitating a campus conversation after the Reverend Dr. William Barber lecture on allyship, anti-racism, and action. And then through things like Writing Center, the Peace and Justice Studies affiliated faculty, just having conversations with other faculty about kind of current and new research that's coming out on anti-racist pedagogy, on inclusive pedagogy, and thinking about how that looks both kind of in the current online format, but then also getting back into the traditional classroom and kind of best practices for creating an equitable learning environment for each and every one of our students. So that's something that has been mostly happening online through all these kind of Zoom discussions, but that I hope will kind of continue into the next years and kind of creating space for these conversations, not just online, but also in person, and to be able to kind of put some of those into practice and be able to watch each other do that and grow as a team.
Yeah, that's great. So maybe we can bring Puja back on in the studio and have, I guess, as Puja comes up back on, because I think she can hear us even as we're getting her camera back set up.
Yeah, I can hear you.
So now that you've had a year in full-time as faculty members, maybe both of you, what are you looking forward to, over the next 2, 3, 4 years? And obviously there may be some excitement about just getting back on campus and having everybody around, but what's now that you know us a little bit, what are you excited about?
Well, I'll go first, I guess. Like you said, I'm excited about getting back on campus, being able to see the students more face to face. Like Elizabeth said, I think those personal connections that happen so organically when you have the space for face to face connection, we're missing this past year to a point, and so I'm excited for that. I'm also excited now that we've gone through, our first year kind of understanding the process and the culture of Lewis University, kind of taking advantage of all the opportunities that Lewis has to offer, the delving deeper into serving on the committees and to taking advantage of all the opportunities and activities that are available on campus, and also just kind of being able to further develop our own curriculum, continuing to grow partnerships and develop experiential learning opportunities for our students with different sites across the community to further enhance their learning.
That's great. Yeah, Elizabeth, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Similarly, I am also just really looking forward to seeing campus and being on campus physically and kind of meeting some people in person that I've actually only ever met on Zoom. So that'll be really nice. And one of the other things that I'm looking forward to is that some of the connections that I think we've made online, for example, in my world religions class, we actually had kind of an opportunity to do these like online field trips because a lot of religious organizations were streaming their services. And so we were able to make a connection with a nearby synagogue, Congregation Beth Shalom in Naperville, and the course was able to go to their Zoom Kabbalat Shabbat service and then meet with one of the members in our classroom discussion about the Shabbat service afterwards. And so those kinds of connections that were kind of facilitated in part by the pandemic and by these online modes, I think will be really great to be able to enhance and continue to collaborate with them, but also with other community partners in other religious faiths that we can start making those connections, but also expanding on those connections once we are able to be back in person and be able to do more events and do more of these kinds of visits in person.
That's exciting. I guess I want to ask one more question, and then we'll probably wrap things up. And it's a predictable question. You two are part of a cohort of new faculty who will be together for years to come, I hope, and you will be the two of you will be together with your cohort of faculty members who started this year. And and a lot of times, that's a really rich way for people to maintain interdisciplinary and intercollegiate networks through their careers. So I hope that for you as we come back together. And then that's a way of saying that we'll have a new group that we've hired who are coming in the fall. And so I just want to, now that you're experienced, what advice do you have for that new group of people coming in? And I know you've had an unusual year, but we will be asking you to give advice to them in the fall. So give us a little preview of what that advice might be.
Well, I would just say, there's a lot of supports here. I would say that the Lewis community has a lot of different supports. Like I said, this was a tough year, but it was also, turned into really valuable learning experience. I'm lucky to work with an incredibly supportive and dynamic faculty, and in our program and outside, externally too. I met a lot of people, and we were able to collaborate and synthesize our ideas and skills and kind of problem solve through these challenges and achieve the goals that we had set for ourselves. So I would say that, it takes some time, I think, especially like for me, this was my first job in academia, to learn the culture and the process, and just know that you have very thoughtful and supportive teams around you that are happy to guide you. And so don't be afraid to reach out for that support and look for that guidance, because it's there.
Yeah, I actually was going to say something very similar. I think part of it is just to know when you first get started, those first few weeks, I think were really, really overwhelming. And to know that it is like that. It was helpful for me to hear from other faculty who had more experience that it was like that for everyone and that you would get through it, and that it does get easier. And now that I'm on the other side, I can say, yes, it does indeed get a little bit easier and you can get through it. But also just having that community. I think Lewis University has a really great and really strong sense of community and sense of support for everyone who becomes part of that community, whether it be students, staff, or faculty. And I also think that charism of association is really, really lived out. That it's not just something that we pay lip service to, but it's something that I have seen over and over again as my colleagues reach out to say, how are you doing? How can I help? Would you like to have a conversation about how this went and how it might go next time? Or would you like to come to this meeting that I think might interest you? Or, those kinds of things of involving people and making connections, and also offering themselves as support for, best practices for learning online, or, how to balance your research and your teaching and your service, or all of these different questions that come up, has been really invaluable to me. And I'm grateful for that, and also grateful that I have a chance to kind of be a part of that too for future faculty coming in.
Well, thank you both.
Yes.
So obviously you've learned so much, both of you, but also contributed so much to us as a community, and we can't wait to all be back on campus together. But Puja, Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us this week. I hope you have a wonderful summer, that you both are able to relax and rejuvenate a little bit, but also, find some time for those, many things that faculty do over the summer, working on courses, doing research. For you, Elizabeth, finishing your dissertation and defending. So just thank you so much for all you do and have done for our students, and I hope you have a great weekend, but also a great summer.
Thank you.
so
Same
much.
to both of you. Thank you.
So with that, we'll wrap up our program. I just wanted to, again, say thank you to everybody, especially thanks to John and Joe and our student producers because we're really, in some sense, wrapping up the year. We're going to have a few shows over the summer, so this is our last regular, weekly show. We're going to have shows on June 10th. And for people in the community, you'll get an email from my office. July 15th, and then starting back up weekly on August 5th, and then weekly after that through next year. We are looking forward to, as we begin next year, just as Dr. Sint said, to also invite on next year some of our new cohort of faculty members next year, and as well as new key staff people to introduce them to the community. But also there's so much to celebrate every week, and we'll have new issues around COVID and all the ways that we come back to campus next fall. So we'll start that the first week of August. So just again, congratulations to all of our graduates. Congratulations to our faculty who were promoted or tenured. Thank you to everyone in the Lewis community for your commitment to the Flyers Promise throughout the year. We had a really amazing response by the community to this COVID pandemic, and I am really proud of the community for the way that it responded. We will keep in touch over the summer and keep you aware of decisions that are being made. I wish you all a wonderful summer. Many blessings to you and your family.